So great to be here this morning, and thank you for your patience. Absolutely appreciate that. We are here to discuss AI sovereignty and innovation, and what that means. It's a real interesting time geopolitically, so I'm really excited to have, and I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves, leaders from France as well as Canada. Oh, you cannot hear me. Is that better? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So hopefully everybody heard what I had said around the AI sovereignty, that we have Canada represented here, France. I think with the geopolitical events, we all know that it's very important, and probably more important now than it's ever been. So to introduce myself, and then I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself, and we'll get started. I'm a partner with PwC. My role in Canada is the National Alliances and Emerging Technology Leader. So I spend a lot of time working with our clients on emerging tech, which is moving so fast, as we know, and working with all of our important partners. So why don't I start with you, Oliver, and you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. My name is Olivier Abecassis. I'm the CEO of Qwant, which is a French search engine focusing on privacy. And I'm also the CEO of a joint venture we made between Qwant and Ecosia, the German search engine, in order to build our own search tech. I'm going to elaborate on this.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Mohamed, the CTO of Orange Business.
Hey there. I'm the late one. I'm Martin Kon, the president and COO of Cohere. We're the leading secure AI for business company. I'll probably talk a little bit more about that when we get into the discussion, but we're a global company that happens to have proud Canadian roots. I'm also German. Our CEO and co-founder, who's one of the inventors of the Transformer, is Spanish and British through his parents. We have 20 people here in Paris, about 80 in London. Our head of search is in Germany. So I think we already have that sort of transatlantic link. And of course, all of us have worked at the headquarters of the biggest US big tech companies as well. But we are independent from them all, which is, I think, these days probably something quite important.
Very, very important. So I think we'll get started with the questions. As I had said, I think AI sovereignty is, as we know, been a discussion for years. I think given the recent events, it's now become a need for very fast, agile, and what we would call concrete types of ideas to really solve what AI sovereignty is, because let's be honest, it's tough when we've spent 20, 30 years relying on another partner and not doing it for ourselves. So I'm going to start with you, Oliver, and I want to ask you, we had a really great conversation the other day around agile sovereignty strategies. So taking agile, that we like to say in technology, but applying it to sovereignty. Do you want to speak a bit to your ideas on that?
Sure. I think let me come back on what is the core basis of Gen AI. Gen AI was enabled by the capacity to access to data. So data is definitely the key component of it, and especially the web data. When we talk about Gen AI, it's of course the capacity to train models. So to train models, we need data. And then it's the capacity to access to fresh content and to access to web data. So it means that if we want to develop any Gen AI feature, we need to be able to access to the web data. And when it comes to accessing the web data, so far, we are totally dependent from US technologies. There are two elephants in the room. We have Google, which is strong on the B2C model. And we had Microsoft that was providing Bing API in order to give access to that data. For some strategic reasons, probably linked to ChatGPT, Microsoft decided to leave that market and to say that they will focus on not providing any more that access. So it means that if, as European company, we plan to develop any Gen AI features and solutions, we won't have any access to web data in the near future. For that reason, we do believe that it's a good timing to get rid of any kind of dependency, and definitely the overall geopolitical situation push us harder to do so, and that is the reason why we thought that instead of complaining about that dependency and that difficult situation, we had to move and we have to partner. And this is exactly when we decided to partner with Ecosia in order to consider that even if on the search engine market, which again is very competitive because the remaining part left by Google is small, we should partner and join forces in order to build our own future and get our own solutions. And that's why we decided a year ago to set up a company, to dedicate R&D teams in order to build a search technology that will be available for any company in the European market that just want to build Gen AI feature by accessing to web data. And we did it, and we are quite proud to say that now this API is available for the French web contents. We just launched it these days, and the name of the API is the STEN API. And we're gonna develop it globally just to make sure that, again, accessible web content, which is the core basis of Gen AI, will not be in a position where we depend from others, and again, where we can be blocked sometimes. And regarding your question, Michel, I think that the best way to address this issue is just to say, let's build things together. Let's try to say, and definitely the AI enable us to make things easier than what it was in the past. So, to make a long story short, it's a good time to build things, to partner with maybe sometimes competitors, but to consider that the European and the non-US world is big enough to take position in the market.
No, that's great. And so AI sovereignty is also about economic competitiveness. And would you want to add anything to that, Mohamed?
I think actually what I really liked here is the co-creation model he's talking about, that we really need to partner together. And also, while we still need access to the web data, we still need to be sure that it's accessed in a secure way. We need to be sure that our data hosted in a secure way without any dependencies to any foreign nations, which in Orange Business, for example, we start to build the Cloud Avenue, which a data center distributed all over France, which is sovereign data center managed by our French colleagues. And we are in our way to get the ANSI approval to be actually SecNum Cloud certified. And that's an areas where we need inside Europe to start to partner together, especially with, as you said, the elephant in the room, that the innovation is coming from the big hyperscalers and we are not able to compete with them. So the only way for us now to compete is to try to work together and remove the competition from our mind and think about co-creation.
That's great. We're all here together, so we can all co-create. So Martin, anything you'd add on this idea of agile sovereignty and moving quickly?
Yeah, I've got three points that sort of came up as I was listening to the conversation. Number one is I think it's extremely important to clearly differentiate between consumer and enterprise. Web data is mostly irrelevant for enterprise, and so not irrelevant because you still want to access some, but really this is about how you leverage your internal data, and it is fundamentally different. I used to be at Google. I was the CFO of YouTube. We had 2.8 billion daily active users. You know, there's chatbots out there that have 500 million users. They need to anticipate what 500 million users want to ask it. They're generic, by definition, by design. They are generic. That is the opposite of enterprise. Enterprise is like building to building combat. Every company's different. You want to help find needles in haystacks. You know, everyone's haystack is different. Everyone cares about different needles. It is fundamentally different. So there's 6 companies in the world that create frontier AI tech. The other 5 are all consumer focused and controlled by US big tech. One of the things that I'll say, and I was at Google, not all innovation happens in the hyperscalers. There were 8 authors of the attention paper, including our CEO. All 8 of them left Google. to join or found startups. Aiden was the first to do that. A lot of the innovation is not happening in the massive companies. Just like in the 90s, it wasn't Olivetti, EDS, and Nortel who were creating the internet. It was Mark Andreessen and Larry and Sergey and Jeff Bezos and so on. But the second thing I'll say is I find the idea of sovereignty a bit amusing, confusing. I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian here. So if you have a data center in France that's run by a French company and you're a bank, are you okay sending your data to that just because it happens to be on French soil? No, you don't want to send your data out of your bank. How about if that data center is in Finland? Or does every 27 now EU countries need their own? I mean, Vermont doesn't have its own data centers, and they seem quite happy with that. For us, we've always, since day one, talked about private deployment. 90% of our business is private deployment. That means keeping it wherever a company or a government organization's data is. If it's in one cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, on-prem, air-gapped, wherever, all of the above, we ship our tech to where their models are. Now, if that needs to then be within the country for regulatory reasons, sure, you can have that as well. But I don't think the idea of just building massive data centers is that are on the soil of a country. What happens if they're run by an American company, or all the chips come from Jensen or Lisa anyway? So I think for us, it's just private deployment, which could be sovereign in a country or could be sovereign inside a company or a government institution. The third thing I'll say is, and I said this last night actually at the Palace at dinner, I'm very worried if we get to this deglobalization where everyone says, US bad, we have to do it all ourselves. I mean, no one can compromise on the quality of technology. The reason why US tech is used is because it's generally the best. We use Google search because it is the best, it works, right? That doesn't mean there's not a lot of an opening for alternatives, just like ChatGPT is great for certain things, Cohere is great at other things. And so I really think that we need to make sure that we're not just blindly saying, let's, because of some things that maybe one person said, we can't work with them anymore. We're in Canada not because we want to be sovereign, it's because modern AI was invented at U of T. Geoffrey Hinton won the Nobel Prize last year, all three of our co-founders studied under him. And there's incredible talent around U of T. We also are in San Francisco, New York, London, all the places where the talent is. And so it needs to be frontier, world-class, the best technology, but then respecting and reflecting the local needs. That's why with Fujitsu, we have co-created the objectively best Japanese capabilities for Fujitsu. We're doing it with LG in Korea. We're doing it with STC in the Gulf. We're in discussions to do that here as well. Don't try and create from scratch, but work with a partner. We think a Canadian one maybe is even more attractive these days, but certainly even without that, all of those partners had nothing to do with anti-US. It had to do with the fact that we were the best solution to configure and customize capabilities. I think, as you said, co-create in partnership, and so it becomes something that's unique to France, or maybe unique to Orange, unique to STC. We're doing this with RBC, with Dell that was recently announced. So I think that idea of co-development and making sure that the needs are reflected and not just a blind, we have to do it ourselves because of some things that happen in the news.
Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Martin. I think that it's not binary. It's not considering that we have to be 100% dependent from US tech or being alone. It's a model that we have to invent that is to take benefit of what we can do with the best solution at the best time. And this is definitely agility. And if I consider what we did on GenAI, we firstly start with OpenAI because this was the first API to be available. Then we switched to Mistral, maybe sometimes we will discuss together. I think that the question is to understand in which world we now live. But we have to drive the car with eyes open. And I think in the past sometimes we were saying, okay, we have the tech that is coming from the US giants, it's fine, it's enough. No, it's not enough. And even if we are small, in fact, we have the capacity to take a part in the global chain. And I think that is the real game changer of AI. It enables small companies with great tech to be a component where probably before it was much more difficult because the cost of infrastructure, of investment was definitely so high.
So I think it's very good discussion. The next question was going to be around specifically more on sort of ecosystem plays. I know you said every country would have a data center. I think we would look more of it as maybe an EU grouping. Maybe Canada can be part of that. Who knows, right? But I agree, every country, certain things. So do you have anything to add about the idea of an ecosystem and how that might look in an agile manner as you're building up? Because these things can be monolithic, right? Any ideas?
Yeah, but I think actually, even when we are building an ecosystem, I will agree with you. We need to build an ecosystem which allow us also to innovate. So it's not only about closing doors. It's not about being close to France, as you said. And if a bank is outside France, they are okay to move the data in France? Or if a multinational bank have a part of the bank in US, part in Asia, and part in Europe, how we move the data. And that's actually where we need to think when we think about ecosystem. We need to think about how data move between different countries, how data actually is in transit, how data is treated in rest. We need to consider a better access control. But I just want actually to think like you made me think about what we have in Orange Business. So we are trying to do this trusted solutions or trust-based solution. Trust-based solution, myself, I call it trust parameter. So we have what we call it trust connectivity, so sovereign connectivity. We have a connectivity not only in France, not only in Europe, actually connectivity covering, let's say, the whole world, which is managed. I consider it truly a sovereign connectivity, and we are extending it and looking to extend with, in a different scale, how actually to introduce slicing, where we have sovereign, where we have European slice, and so on. And then after the connectivity, we need to consider infrastructure, and that's the second parameter on the trust parameter, how to have a sovereign infrastructure, and that's where we have what we call it Cloud Avenue. Cloud Avenue is hosted in France, is hosted in the rest of Europe. It's not necessarily a big data centers, but it's a servers available for our customers across the whole Europe to be able to host their critical workload as close as possible to their factories or hydropower plants and so on. And then the third, how we treat data. And here we have, for example, live intelligence trust. And that's an offer where it's actually sitting above the data, able to have an agent out of it, where you are actually, we treat the data in a very secure way. And that's what I call it trust parameters. We have the three in Orange Business. But I will say it again, in order to build an ecosystem, I think we need to co-create. We need to think beyond the Orange Business, beyond the special brand. We need to think how we all work together, even at a point of time if we were competing with each other, or even if we will compete with each other in the future.
Yeah, can I build on that? I actually think that globally, I think the telcos actually have a big role in this because of the trust you have, the customer relationships, the enterprise relationships, the networks, data, etc. And I think there's a real unlock there. We're working very closely with many telcos. I mentioned STC, which is quite a visible public one, but several others as well. I think there's another analogy that I like, but I enjoy the taste of my own Kool-Aid. A lot of people say that LLMs now are becoming commodity. Oh, there's so many and whatever. It's really, really, really hard to make this tech. You don't need $20 billion. We raised just under $1 billion, and you know our latest Command A is competitive with, actually outperforms DeepSeek V3 and GPT-4o. We only need 2 GPUs though. DeepSeek needs 8. GPT-4o needs 16. And so the idea of total cost of ownership, not API calls, which are all subsidized, but actual total cost of ownership for private deployment is important. But I liken it a little bit to electricity. It's really hard to make electricity. You need to build a nuclear power plant if you're in France. Maybe in Germany you build natural gas powered power plants, but that didn't work out very well. You know, we built one. A few other companies have built them. But we tried this for 2 years. No one really goes around to say, hey, do you want to buy 25 kilowatt hours? You know, how about a 20% discount on the weekends? No one's, but that's what we've been doing with LLMs. Hey, look at my API, and how much is your token, and where are you on some silly leaderboard based on how good you can play Pokemon? None of that matters in terms of how it's going to add value in business. And so what we've done is move more towards applications and solutions. So an end-to-end search solution called Compass, which has embed for, re-rankers, chunking, parsing, indexing, vector data, everything that you need that's already done, so you don't have to do it yourself, and it just works. And we happen to have the best people in the world at search and retrieval. No one talks about that in articles, but that, in my mind, is the backbone of enterprise AI, is search and retrieval. And then our North Agentic AI platform, which brings that together with our command generative models, all the pre-built connectors to your data sources, GUIs, applications, control plane, all this stuff, the 90% of the iceberg underwater. To make a POC with an API, a student can do it in an hour. That's not enterprise grade. To do that, it's really hard, and that's where we've moved more, and I think to what we were saying, to co-develop. We're doing that with RBC and banking, North for banking. We're doing it with STC and telco, with Aramco and energy, with Fujitsu, with LG, with Dell. But it's working with them to configure and customize for their, haystacks, for what they're doing, whether it's for themselves or for their own customers externally. And so I think the raw models, we still talk about that. I think a bit of a distraction. All the capabilities end up being fairly similar. The efficiency is quite different, and the degree to which you can customize is quite different if it's primarily consumer-oriented or enterprise-oriented. But then taking that, working with the customers, partners themselves to say, what does Orange need this to do for us and for our own third-party customers, and co-develop. That then becomes sovereign. That's something that Orange owns. Fujitsu has Takane. It's built on Cohere. We did it in 6 weeks for V1.0 or 2.0, 3.0 is always getting better. It's objectively the best in Japan, and it's exclusive to Fujitsu. Is that sovereign? I mean, they're deploying it in their data centers.
For their company anyway.
For the company
But
it is.
they're global.
And they care about this being in Japan for Japanese banks. That's their decision. It's something that their customers want. It's not just a blind decision. So I think we're seeing very similar things from different angles, I think.
Yeah, and we could probably speak for a whole another hour, but we are going to go to Q&A now. So do we have some questions for our esteemed panelists? Thank you.
Can you come here, please?
Thanks. My question would be, how do you see this evolving over the next couple of years, especially when we're building all of this infrastructure and the demand, the compute demand of AI is projected to exponentially increase in the very near future?
I think, okay, in a couple of years, we will have, AI actually will be the new normal. I actually believe that will create the new internet. Or next generation internet, which is we don't know today, for customers, for consumer, but also for enterprises. But if I focus for enterprise point of view, especially as I came from the B2B, I think that it will be agents everywhere. I think actually that it might end that we will have agents. We as a B2B company will have agents deployed on our behalf at the customer edge, and these agents actually are acting on behalf of our customer. Because based on trust, and this trust actually where I believe, I will not say LLM will be commodity, but I say actually sovereignty will be commodity. Sovereignty will be operationalized, that it became the day-to-day, the normal routines. Like yesterday, we really thought how to get one server and to start to build around it to host a very simple application. Today, infrastructure became commodity. Then security, secure infrastructure became commodity. I think tomorrow, sovereignty will be commodity, and that's what will help us to think about the next step, how to innovate over the sovereignty, how to have the next generation internet, how to have agents everywhere. At least that's my point of view.
I could, just picking up on that, you obviously know the infrastructure well. I think it's worth differentiating between training and inference. So everyone thinks that you need hundreds of billions of dollars to create this technology. You do not. We've proven that, others have proven that. And it's possible to have an incredibly performant and efficient technology that's created without needing, $500 billion for training. Inference, however, I agree with you, will explode. But I think I'm saying what you're saying, which is that's a good thing. That means we're all using it. And what will happen, the same as what happened with the internet, with mobile, is that this used to be incredibly expensive. And now it costs next to nothing, but we use it, unfortunately, probably 7 hours a day. So the volume of usage goes through the roof. The price per unit goes down. I'm sure the overall spend will go up, but it's because, to your point, whether it's agents on the edge autonomously, whether it's us using this every day, whether it's built into all of the products we use, our usage will skyrocket, just like our usage of internet and mobile has skyrocketed. The original price for that would have been unbearable, but of course the price per unit came down. A lot of it because of companies like yours innovating.
Oliver?
Yeah, I think that the challenge of our industry will be to build a sustainable AI and to consider AI where we really need it. There is currently a discussion and a lot of debate regarding does the search will switch from search engines to ChatGPT? And we know that some queries are now made on ChatGPT, but the cost of responding to a query on ChatGPT compared to Google or Qwant or anyone is 10 times or 100 times bigger. So we have to be very focused on considering when AI and that capacity that we need is really helpful and there is a kind of ROI to use it and where it's not. So it's really a question of responsibility of all of us to build that sustainability around this.
All right. Do we have time for one more question? Do we have any more questions? No?
Yeah, another one.
It doesn't look like we have another question, so thank you very much. Oh, you have one here? Okay.
Really interesting panel conversation. Warren Tucker from PwC. Yeah, it's a question, Martin, around the point you made on innovation doesn't always come from the big companies. In fact, increasingly it comes from elsewhere. I think it's a very well-made point. What tips have you got for those of us that are interested in staying connected to where some of the best innovation is going to come? Because as you walk around VivaTech here, there's thousands of companies and kind of headline levels, they all look very similar in terms of what they're describing that they do, particularly in the world of AI. What would be your tips as to how to discern those that are going to be the dominant players and those that aren't, other than where the folks from YouTube or Google go to?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'm still long on Google shares from working there. I think Google's an incredible company, will continue to do extremely well. Maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I do see a hierarchy of AI deployments, and the base of that, the biggest part, will be the mass market sort of generic uses that billions of us will use 10 times an hour. It's going to be extremely well served by Microsoft and Google. It'll just be built into Workspace, built into 365. No one here uses a spell check app, because it's just built into everything. The same will be true of a lot of these. And then Google's already doing it, and they raise their price slightly. We pay like $2 a month more or $5 a month more for all the AI things they built in, and we use them. The next level is all the SaaS capabilities that are built into Oracle, Salesforce, SAP, etc. The top is the one that we focus on. We help the middle group, but is really the mission critical capabilities that will give a company alpha. They can do something different to their competitors, which is not a generic chatbot, of course. So back to your question, a lot of the big tech companies are, we just saw another one with a sort of quasi not acquisition from a DOJ perspective with Scale AI and buying a lot of these. We happen to very proudly want to stay and scale this company and IPO and remain independent. We think it's incredibly important also for the world, but also we think that's the better way to keep innovating and not be subservient to another business model, selling cloud, for example. So to answer your question directly, there are some really good research components. We have something called Cohere Labs. It's run by Sarah Hooker, who's incredible. She's British, Irish, lives in California, grew up in several countries in Africa. She was on the AI 100 list last year. And look at the stuff that they're doing inside those. And of course, all the other companies have great parts as well. You can sort of see like what's on the horizon. In terms of which of these startups to pick out, if I knew that, I'd be in venture capital, not a boring business guy in a company. I think things like this are great because you get to bump into them and see them and so on. So I don't have a perfect answer for that. Again, there are some, if you look at Radical Ventures, our seed investor, I would say objectively the best AI VC in the world. They've looked at 8,400 companies and they invested in 44. And that stat's 6 months old, so they're probably over 10,000 now. Literally every AI company in the world they've talked to. So if you look at where they, or Index Ventures, or some of these companies, where they're placing their bets, I think that's an interesting place to see, you know, where maybe people who have studying, you know, where they're putting it. And not just the companies, but the thesis that's around. You'll see there's a common thread for Radical, like where they're investing in all of those 44 companies. So that might be a way to go.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. I think it was a great discussion. I want to thank Mohamed, Olivier, and Martin. Thank you. Really appreciate that you could be here. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.